here with Gulf Coast State College and Spike Sioux Productions. This past summer, we had the opportunity, a number of the members, to make public service announcement videos and just to kind of let people know about upcoming hurricane safety. And what more to talk about hurricane safety and also be here at the Emergency Operations Command here in Southport, which is also on the campus of Gulf Coast State College. I'm actually here with Mr. Mark Bowen, and he's the Chief Operations of Bay County's Emergency Operations Center. Now, Mark, tell me a little about, first off, tell me a little about the center and a little bit about what you do here.
Well, this is a state-of-the-art emergency operations center, and the main focus of this center is when we're not having an emergency to train people. And that's why it's such a great deal to have it on the campus of Gulf Coast State College. Train first responders and government officials and students of the college that are taking public safety programs and how the incident command system works, how we respond to events like hurricanes and things of that nature. And then when the real thing occurs, we've got the state-of-the-art facility to actually perform that function in as a jurisdictional emergency operations center. And this is the only partnership like this that we know of in the United States. And it's a great facility. It's built to Category 5 wind loads for hurricanes, and it's got all the technology that you imagine from Gulf Coast.
Why is it so important to you to inform the public to get ready even if there's no storm, even if the storm that we have now is not even going to go anywhere near Panama City?
You know, the main thing that people need to understand is government is set up to provide services on a day like today, where you know, there might be a little storm outside, there might be a structure fire in one of the cities, the police will be out there arresting bad guys, but you know, by and large, it's a typical day. EMS is running calls, taking people to the hospital. When a hurricane impacts our area, all of those services are just like they are today. So there aren't suddenly, you know, hordes of people here that can help in an emergency. There isn't suddenly 1,000 paramedics and 1,000 firefighters and 1,000 EMTs to help people. There's a period of time that people have to be self-sufficient. The same is true for necessities like water and food. You know, we have just-in-time delivery. When I was in college, that was a huge new thing. It was going to save all this money in retail. Well, now it's come to pass. And a shelf in the Walmart, that shelf costs money. That shelf space costs money. And if that shelf is empty, the manager of the Walmart goes by there and somebody's getting rung up about why there's nothing on that shelf. And the warehouse in the Walmart is the same way, or any retail facility. They move things through there. Things don't sit there. So there's nothing stockpiled in this community or any other community from the private sector specifically for storms. So that's why people that live here that are going to prepare themselves need to go, beginning of hurricane season, get some water, get some non-perishable food, batteries, the whole gamut, you know, that I'm sure you guys are going to show and we can go to the website and look at. They need to get those things while there's not a mad rush to get them, because during the mad rush, they're going to be gone, and retailers will be trying to get more and more stuff in here because they want to sell stuff. But at the end of the day, the logistics are simply not set up for a hurricane. They're set up for day-to-day, just like we are in police, fire, and EMS.
Okay. What are some of the basic things that you feel people need to have in a survival kit?
The first thing, of course, is water, and you know, one of the best things probably to educate people about these types of issues are these shows on television, like, you know, Survivor Man, or last night I was flipping through and I saw the one where the two guys are out there, one of them's barefoot and they're you know, they're clawing their way through the wilderness. You know, you'll learn on those shows that water is the #1 issue. 3 days without water, you're going to die. It's just that simple. And it's got to be clean water. It's got to be water you can drink. So water's #1. Right after that is non-perishable foods. And that's going to be high-calorie foods like nuts, granola bars, stuff that can sit on the shelf a long time, but you can eat just a little bit of it and get a lot of calories. It's just like being in a lifeboat after the Titanic, and there's only so much food. You want that food to have as much calorie content as possible. Then there's medicines. You know, for people who have medical issues, I do. I have got some medication that if I don't take it, it's not a life-threatening issue, but it's certainly going to be a bad day. Definitely. And I have to have enough of that medication so that if the pharmacy's closed, I can still take my meds until the pharmacy reopens. So I get samples, so I can have about a 10-day supply of medications. then you start getting into things that are more comfort items than they are survival items, but nevertheless is important. Batteries, flashlights, things like your insurance documents. There's just a whole host of things. And one of the issues that is kind of unique to this area is during hurricane season, everybody needs to have 3/4 of a tank of fuel in their car.
Right.
They need to look at the 3/4 mark on the gauge, just like the empty mark. I call it the fire department rule, because when the fire guys get to work in the morning, that fuel gauge better not be below 3/4 of a tank, because the engine may have to go out, run at a fire scene for a very long time, running the pump, and we can't ever afford to be low on fuel.
Right.
During a hurricane season like we have in Florida, the gas stations simply run out of fuel. If there's a run on the gas stations, just like there's a run on Home Depot or Lowe's to get plywood or those kinds of supplies, the fuel vendors simply run out of fuel. There's not enough fuel to come in. And so if you don't have fuel in your car and you need to evacuate, well, you're done. You can't do what you need to do to protect yourself. So those are some of the more important things that I like to tell people.
I remember growing up, we used hurricane lanterns because, it was better than batteries. They lasted longer. But nowadays, that's a little bit of a safety issue. So obviously, is that one of those things that you recommend keeping out of that kit, even if you're staying?
Yeah, anything that has an open flame in it, you want to stay away from. And one of the things, of course, that we recommend is that people protect their windows and doors. And so the last thing, as you put plywood up over windows, for example, every time you put plywood up over a window or a door, you are blocking a potential exit during a fire.
Right.
And so there used to be a huge issue with fires during events like this, because the only way people had was hurricane lanterns or different things that used some type of flame. Now we definitely, flashlights, batteries. One of the other things now that kind of along those same lines is everybody wants to have an emergency generator in their home.
Right.
Well, that's great. The problem is in their home. They need to be outside the home. There's more. Hurricane Wilma is a good example. There were more deaths from carbon monoxide than anything else associated with that hurricane. People had these things in their home or in their garage, and the carbon monoxide fumes were getting sucked in the home, and they were overcome and killed by that. What a shame. So there's a lot of good technology out there, and you want to get the best that you can afford and then use it safely.
Now, obviously, this is a great topic to talk on. One of the PSAs we actually ran, Josh held up like a painter's tape. Now, I've seen every now and then, because I drive, I also do other photography work, and I've seen people during a hurricane, they will get like they'll get duct tape or even painter's tape, put it over their windows. And I know that's one of the biggest myths that people have, that they think that putting that little strip of tape or even duct tape, because duct tape works for everything, and will actually hold that window from a tree, or at least it won't make it break as much. Obviously, that's a myth. What are some other myths that you hear almost on a daily basis with hurricane and these kind of preparations that you just want to go, no?
That's a great example of a myth right there, and I guess it's something easy to do that makes people feel good. And what I would say is there are a lot of folks out there that will prey on you before, during, and after a storm. If it sounds good to be true, it is. Somebody that says, hey, I've got this nifty roll of, XYZ that is going to protect your home or your window, well, it's a scam.
Snake oil.
Yeah, and a lot of people come to areas like this, particularly after a storm, and try to take advantage of people. We saw a lot of it before and during the BP oil spill, where suddenly everybody suddenly had the answer to a technological issue that basically we know there has not been an answer to for 70 years or more. And so you just have to be careful about that. I can't think of. I think you gave the best example of something that's a myth. Nothing else comes to mind except just be wary. There's the basics. That's what you need, and anything that sounds too good to be true probably isn't going to help you out.
Thank you, Mark. And what we'll do is we'll actually take a break and show you some of our public service announcement videos. And when we come back, we'll talk about the next step, evacuation, when is it too late, and other preparations that you need to make for hurricane season.
most important thing to have during the hurricane season is a hurricane supply kit. Plan ahead. Keep at least a 3-day supply of water and store 1 gallon per person per day. Only purchase non-perishable and canned foods and ready-to-eat items. You will need a first aid kit that is also prepared, have an LED flashlight, and a battery-powered radio. Preparing for the storm now will keep you and your family safe later. For more information, visit hurricanesafety.org.
It is a common misconception that using adhesive tape will prevent glass from shattering during a storm. Instead, use hurricane shutters or corrugated metal that can be bolted to the structure of the house. Preparing for the storm now will keep you and your family safe later. For more information, visit hurricanesafety.org.
Hello everyone, and welcome back to our special GC Wired coverage of hurricane season. We're here with Mark Bowen here at the Emergency Operations Center in Bay County, just located in Southport. Again, we're talking about some of the safety issues and things that you need to be aware of when considering doing your survival kit. So now we've talked about the survival kit a little earlier. Now we're actually going to talk about during the storm. And a lot of times people actually like to wait to the last minute to decide whether or not they want to stay and get out. And there's a whole host of reasons. So you have this hypothetical scenario. Let's just say a major hurricane, category 2, 3, 4, or 5, is coming to our area in the next 24, 72 hours. According to impact, like I said, that's when they're expecting it to hit. What should be the first thing people do in that kind of scenario?
One of the first things people need to do, and the beauty of it is they can do it before the impending storm, is find out if they live in an evacuation zone or not. There are evacuation zones in the county, and they can go to the county's website and go to our GIS map and see where the evacuation zones are. They can put in their address and see what their evacuation zone is, or they can call 784-4000 and one of our dispatchers will put in their information for them. But basically, they need to know what evacuation zone they live in, because when we decide which areas of the county need to evacuate, we tell the news media, okay, here we go, here's the map, and these are the zones that need to go. Well, if you already know your zone, you're already ahead of the game. You know that if it's, for instance, a Category 2 storm, chances are, these are the areas that are going to need to be evacuated. It's all based on what we think the storm surge is going to be. And it's gotten a little more complex this year. It used to be real easy.
Right.
They used to have the Saffir-Simpson scale, and a Category 1 storm had Category 1 surge all the way through 5. Now, the experts have decided that when they went back and measured, well, the Category 2 storm, the surge was actually up here at Category 4, and then Category 4 storm didn't have that much surge, and so the surge isn't as correlated to the wind and the pressure as they thought it was. So they've broken those apart, but our evacuation zones are still based on where we think storm surge is going to go. The old saying is you have to run from water and hide from wind. So if you're going to get inundated with water, you're not going to survive. You're going to have to, you're going to get hit with debris and water at enormous forces, and at the best you might survive and then tread water and drown. It's just a bad deal. Katrina, a good example, people going in their attics and then drowning, just horrible. But once you get away from that water, then all you got to do is find a place where you can get out of the wind, where a structure that can take the kind of wind that we're expecting. So the evacuation zones in the county are based on that storm surge, and if you know that up front, then you really know whether you're going to have to evacuate or not. It's almost as important if you don't live in an evacuation zone for you not to evacuate, particularly if it's a Category 1 or 2 storm, because our roads will only take so much traffic. So it used to be just, big storm's coming, everybody leave, and then everybody's sitting on the road. Hurricane Opal, great example. Now we've refined that a little bit so that we can tell people, here are the areas that we're really most concerned about. Don't be in these areas. And of course, we open up schools east of the Hathaway Bridge. All of those schools are shelters. They're shuttered. The windows and doors have a 220-mile-an-hour rating material that's on them. We try to make those schools as safe as we can, and so there's a place of last refuge, if you will, for people to go. But the best thing to do is have a plan. get out of town and get out ahead of everybody else if you can do it.
And that's actually a great segue to the next thing. We actually have now, even when we were a community college, now as a state college, we have a number of students who don't live in our general area, but they still come here for a number of classes. Some actually will probably find one of the apartments here and just live here because it's closer to the college. What do you recommend to those students who hear, okay, it's time for them to evacuate? This is their first time being in a hurricane season. So what is the first thing that you would recommend that they do if they live in an area where there's a good chance of, in that cone of uncertainty, their family members are living in that same area? Do you recommend that they talk to their family, they can talk to their family members, try to find where there's a middle place? And
yes, and you know, chances are, particularly if their family is inland, chances are, even if they're in the cone of uncertainty for the storm, they may get impacted by the storm, but not necessarily that storm surge. So their family, if they're living down here, I think back to when I was in college, that what I would want to do is get home, get with the family, and then, you know, if we had to leave somewhere from there, you know, then we would. But if I was here, had an apartment, having fun like I'm sure all you guys do because you're in college,
of course,
I would make sure, absolutely sure, that that fuel issue was taken care of. I would not let my fuel gauge get below 3/4 of a tank. And it sounds hard to do, but if you get in the habit of doing it, it's actually easier to go to the gas station because you're not spending as much money. It's psychologically, it's easier for me to do that. It's easier for my wife to do that. So that, and having some high energy foods and a little bit of water in the car, having, you know, being ready to get out of town, because you know, basically, even if you don't make it out in time, you can at least get in your vehicle and make it to a school. And then the issue is going to be a communication plan. Your folks are going to want to know where you are. Hurricane Katrina was a prime example of people just, you know, there's a lot of things you can correlate to the fire service, and one of the things we teach kids early on in life is your exit drill from the house. You have a meeting place outside, because when we get there, if there's nobody in the home, we don't want to have to search the home if it's on fire. We want to put the fire out, and we can't put the fire out till we search the home, because we'll put superheated steam in there and kill anybody that's in the house. So it's really important to us. A big disaster is the same deal. You have to have a communication plan of where are we going to meet. You know, who are we going to call if our phones aren't working and it's going to be some time before we get to a working phone? Who is it that we're going to call? Somebody outside the impact area. For me, it's my sister. She lives in Philadelphia. My parents know that. They live down here. My wife and daughter know that. They live down here. All of our cousins that live down here know that my sister is the one phone number that we're going to call. A meeting place, same type of deal. Where are we going to meet outside the impact area? And for us, it's my sister-in-law's house in Atlanta. People get separated from one another, and they can't call. They don't know anything to do other than just drive somewhere. And so they have to talk about these things beforehand. Everything has to be planned out beforehand, and a little bit of planning will take care of just about anything you can imagine. So that would be my recommendation, is have those things in the car ready to go, have as much of these things in the kit as possible, but you know you're not going to want to ride it out in the apartment by yourself.
Right, of course not. And that's actually another good thing. A lot of people like to wait to the last minute, and I got family members that do the same thing because we lived in Louisiana. We've been through a lot of hurricanes before, and one of the issues that you deal with is people think, oh, well, you know, I can still leave, and if I wait till the last minute, maybe the traffic will clear up a little better. But some people still forget that, you know, at a certain point, bridges shut down. Major roads that are in certain areas will shut down, and even emergency officials will no longer respond. In fact, they will actually head to higher places themselves, like the EOC building. And is that another issue that you want to stress, why maybe it's not always a good idea to wait out the storm?
Absolutely. If you've got the money and you've got the resources, make a good time out of it. I mean, if a storm's coming and everything, you know, if I told you, hey, we're going to go camping, it's going to rain the whole time, we're not going to have any air conditioning, it's going to be horrible, there's going to be a bunch of people there that we don't know that smell bad. That's what a hurricane is, okay? So you don't want to be a part of that. If you can help it, get out early and go visit somebody. Have a plan in place beforehand where, you know, maybe somebody you don't get to see that often. You give them a call and say, you know what, if a hurricane ever comes to Bay County where I'm in school, could I come to your house and visit you guys, during the hurricane? I'm sure they'd say yes. And so you have a friend or family member that you've planned beforehand. And then, when you're seeing the thing come, you decide, you know what, I'm not even going to worry with this. I'm going to hit the road, and then I'm going to come back when everything's good to go. You got the World Wide Web now where you can get online and see if the college is open, when it's going to open back up, when you have to be back at school. Are the roads open? Is there any fuel here? What kind of damage is here? You can find out all that from Atlanta or Dothan or wherever you want to be, and you're comfortable that way. And so if you got the money, be comfortable, get out early. Some people don't have the money to do that. They're going to have to hunker down here. And in those situations, that's why we open up the schools. That's why we do what we do here to shelter people locally, is we know that some people don't have the resources to get out in time. But if they've got the resources, they need to be out early and make a good time of it.
Definitely. And another thing that you were talking about, what students can go online, find out. Students can also check out online, there's a section right on the home page where you can actually go. There's a little section that talks about your cell phone. And what happens is the school will actually send you text messages of when the school's closing for whatever reason. It may not just be dealing with hurricanes, but it can also be dealing with just the fact that power's out or something like that. All you have to do is go online. If you're a student, the service is free, and there's a special little web page that you just fill out the information, and you can actually sign up for these little text messages. Now we're actually going to go ahead and take another break, show some more PSAs that we've done over the summertime, and we'll come back for some final thoughts and also talk about what people can do after the storm. And we'll be back in just a moment.
If you and your family choose to evacuate, or if a mandatory evacuation is issued by officials, plan to take the closest route from your home and do not wait. The longer you wait, the harder it will be to find hotels and to get out of the path of the storm. Leaving as soon as possible will also allow you to avoid heavy traffic, flooded roads, and closed bridges. Preparing for the storm now will keep you and your family safe later. For more information, visit hurricanesafety.org.
Having flood and hurricane insurance on your home is important, but taking photos or videos now of the items in your home will make the insurance claim process easier. For more information, visit hurricanesafety.org.
If you choose to stay home during a hurricane, take shelter in a solid foundation, preferably away from windows and other weak points in the home. The safest place to be is away from the storm, but if you are unable to evacuate, there are designated emergency shelters available to the public. For more information about local emergency shelters, contact your local Red Cross and stay tuned to your local television and radio news networks. Preparing for the storm now will help to keep you and your family safe later. For more information, visit hurricanesafety.org.
And welcome back. We're here once again at the Southport campus of Gulf Coast State College, which also serves as the Emergency Operations Center for Bay County. I'm joining with, once again, Mr. Mark Bowen, who's the Chief of Operations here at the Emergency Operations Center. Now, obviously, we've talked about preparing before the storm, what to do during the storm, and now, as you mentioned, after the storm, this is where a lot of people can get into trouble, major injuries, sometimes leading to death. Talk about what are some of the first things that people need to do when they take that first step out of the house, or when they hear the siren, or when they hear people, officials say it's okay to come back.
Now, once they hear the all clear, then they just need to be careful, make sure they're still hydrated, make sure they're still taking care of themselves, because during these emergencies, you get really focused on the people that you love and on your house and your property, and you can literally forget to eat, you forget to drink water, you don't know it, but you're in a very unhealthy state sometimes. A lot of these people are. And then the other thing that you mentioned is, if they haven't gotten the all clear, they need to stay home. They need to stay home, tune into the local media, or NOAA weather radio, or however they can get information. They don't need to go out walking through the neighborhood to try to look for things. That's how people get electrocuted. It happens every time there's a bad hurricane. The infrastructure damage that's out there. I see people playing in storm surge. They go out and they want to get their picture made in the storm surge. Well, they need to know that raw sewage is in that storm surge. There's the lift stations have lost their loads, and there's all kinds of nasty stuff in stormwater, hepatitis, all kinds of diseases, and people just need to stay out of areas until public safety officials, police, fire, and EMS have gone in and done the work they need to do. The power companies come in. And it's a life safety issue, number one. And then number two, why do you want to be uncomfortable? If you're in Dothan and the air conditioner's working, why come back and subject yourself to 100 degrees and 98% humidity? So people using chainsaws after storms, again, they've been up all night, they've been worried about their home, they've been worried about their family, they haven't eaten, they haven't slept, and then they want to get right out there and take care of that tree that fell. And EMS sees some horrific injuries because of that, because people, they're not in the right frame of mind to be doing that type of work. We have to be very careful in our area of work, and the power company is this way. We only let our personnel work for so long, and we take them off the road and put somebody else in their place. And again, people out there may say, well, why aren't there more emergency service workers out here? Well, there's only so much of us.
Right.
And even though we bring in emergency service workers from other areas, we're not going to put their lives in jeopardy and try to make them work 24-hour days, because then they'll be the one out there with the chainsaw that gets hurt or hurts somebody else. So people just need to, it's common sense right now, but we all get tunnel vision during that storm, and it happens to us just like it does anybody else, and we all just need to be careful that we keep our thinking caps on, that this is it's the basics. It's back to the basics. Do I have enough water and food to get through the day, and is it really that important for me to go outside, or am I just doing it out of curiosity? And it'd be horrible to get injured or killed just because I was interested in something. Get information from the media.
Exactly. And so when people do decide to venture out, and obviously there's still a lot of damage, the infrastructure is still down, as you say, pumps are probably still down, water is still probably down, electricity is going to be out for several days. Do some people really understand that concept, that they are basically going to be on their own for several days? And this is why we always recommend, or the officials always recommend, prepare for enough, because we may not be able to get you in case something happens after the storm for several days.
Right. Not enough people understand that, and that's why this show is such a great idea that you guys are doing, to make sure that every student at Gulf Coast State College knows that they're going to be on their own after one of these storms. You're going to pick up the phone and 911's not going to work. You're going to need help, and there's not going to be anybody to bring it, and so you really have to think. It's back to that Survivor Man deal. You have to think about, what do I need in the trunk of my car? What do I need in the back seat of my car, or in a closet in my apartment, or wherever I'm staying, to keep me alive? I mean, that's some pretty basic stuff, and it's scary to think about, but that's what it is. And honestly, I think that by the time people become older adults, so focused on their job, and so focused on their kids, and so focused on their home and everything, those are the people most at risk. I think people in your age bracket are more apt to go out and act on this.
Right.
You guys have got your whole life ahead of you, and you probably want to see that come about, see the rest of your life. And so, there's a reason why in the fire service we go to schools and talk about fire safety. It's not because kids are spontaneously catching on fire. It's because we know they'll go home and talk to their parents. And so as I'm talking to you, I'm thinking maybe some of the college students that see this might take this opportunity the next time they call home to say, what is our hurricane? But what are we going to do if we have a hurricane? And it's quite likely that on the other end they may hear, well, you know what, we really need to sit down and talk about that, because the parent in the interaction with someone that they love is going to realize that the light bulb's going to go on, that, hey, I need to do this for the person that I love, because a lot of times they're not thinking about doing it for themselves. So everybody just needs to, keep that in mind, and I hope that everybody acts on this. And even if they can't go out and do everything that they find on floridadisaster.org, go do something. Go out and get a weather radio. Put some granola and some water in their car. go and see if they're in an evacuation zone. Just do a few things, and they'll be a lot safer than they were before they watched this program.
Definitely. And of course, one thing I think we've kind of missed, one of the stars of the show, and as you were pointing this out, little gadget out that obviously can cost a couple of bucks, but it's well worth it, even not just during a hurricane season, but like tornado or severe weather, which during our actual production, we actually had a nice little popcorn shower, as one of my meteorologist friends would say. And this is just so inexpensive. You can find this at a grocery store, a hardware store, and they're fairly cheap.
They are, and they're a lifesaver. I like to talk about them like I would a smoke detector. If you're asleep in your home, you hear the smoke detector go off, you got time to get up and get out and get to safety. If you're asleep and there's a tornado coming, well, if this thing is on alert and plugged in, or you've got fresh batteries in it, it's going to tell you that a tornado is coming. That's the only way you're going to be able to be woken up and then get to the innermost room of your home, get in a bathtub with a mattress over you, whatever your tornado plan is. If you don't have that to wake you up, well, you're going to wake up when, large flying objects are coming through the windows of your home, and you're not going to make it. So that weather radio is huge, and it may be the best source of information that you get. And if you invest in one of those now, that's also where the current federal plan is going, in terms of if the President of the United States needs to speak to the entire population at one time, heaven forbid, some type of huge national emergency, that's the network he's going to use to do it. So it's a good investment to go spend 20 or 30 bucks and get one of those.
Definitely a good thing to get. And speaking of getting, we have discussed a lot on hurricane safety, a lot of the hurricane issues, and once again, we're here at the Bay County Emergency Operations Center here in Southport, which is facilitated by Gulf Coast State College. Mr. Mark Bowen, who's the Chief of Operations, thank you so much for being a part of this program. And again, we want to encourage you, there are plenty of websites out there, from Florida Safety,
FloridaDisaster.org.
FloridaDisaster.org. And just so much more information that you can get. Be prepared, know your storm. As what we say, always say, being prepared is the most important thing that you can do during a hurricane and during the hurricane season. For GC Wired and Gulf Coast State College, I'm Daniel Giat.